We are back at my 100 favorite movies list, this time from number 75 to 51. So episode 2 of 4. We left off at number 76, which was Charlotte's Web. So at number 75, it's only fair to be Babe, the other pig movie. I think I've mentioned in other videos, Babe made me give up pork. So I haven't eaten pork since 1995 because of this movie. At number 74, we have Benny and June. Sometimes I feel a lot like Sam in this movie with the hyperfixation on movies and such. But at the end of the day, it's kind of a movie about sibling love, when to let go, and letting neurodivergent people live their own lives. At number 73, we have My Cousin Vinny. I actually haven't seen this in a while, but I have rewatched it so many times in my life. I feel like it needs a spot here. It's just legendary, especially Marissa Tomei's performance, for which she won a Best Supporting Actress Oscar, which is pretty rare for a film like this. I don't think at any point while making this she thought, oh, this is the movie I get an Oscar for. At number 72 is The Sandlot. You would think this would be higher as many times as I've seen this, but it's actually been quite a few years since I watched it, so other things have kind of taken the lead since then. But it's a highly quotable movie, it's a memorable movie, and it's just fantastic. And James Earl Jones as a side character here is just such a bright spot, and it brings up the quality of the whole thing. But these kids are just so good, and a lot of them are still working actors. At 71, we have the classic Wayne's World. I went to see this for my birthday at a theater with my mom. I believe it had come out several months before that, but we tended to go to the cheap theater, you know, that played things that have been out a while. So this is just such a staple for me. And it was, my teen years were spent watching this at least once a week, I think. And while we're talking about excellent movies, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, I felt like it belonged next to Wayne's World. As with most of the 80s movies I'd be choosing, these are things I had on VHS or recorded from television more accurately. We didn't really own too many, you know, store-bought. But Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was a frequent rewatch for me. Kind of a tonal shift now, but for number 69, we have On the Waterfront. This is still probably my favorite Marlon Brando performance other than The Godfather. It's just such a gripping movie, and Karl Malden is so good in this movie. Fantastic. I really need to see more of his stuff. At 68 is Do the Right Thing, which is in this 7-movie Spike Lee collection I have. This may seem like low placement for a movie like Do the Right Thing, but I hadn't seen it until maybe February of this year, so it hasn't been in my life very long, but it instantly made my favorites list. It'll probably move up as time goes on, but for now it's right here at 68. At number 67 is The Purple Rose of Cairo, another Woody Allen movie. This is a fantastic one. I watched it a lot when I was younger. It's basically about a woman who loves movies, and she goes to the theater a lot, mostly as an escape from her not-so-happy marriage to her not-so-nice husband. She goes so often, the character leaves the film and comes into the real world to spend time with her. Jeff Daniels, Mia Farrow, it's such a clever film. And it's well done. Diane Wiest has a small role in this too, but a memorable one. At 66, we have Last Action Hero, which I am thrilled I got to add back into this list. I had to take it off because I decided I only wanted to include films I had on physical media, and I have had the hardest time finding this. I don't know if it's out of print or what, but when you do find copies of it, they're crazy expensive. So I found one in my favorite used media store for $1.99 just this past weekend. So I'm pretty happy about that. Like The Purple Rose of Cairo, this movie blends characters and actors, real world versus movie. And so they're kind of similar in that way. Of course, the storylines are completely different. Hi, so if things look and sound a little different for these next 6 entries, let's just say technical difficulties led to me needing to re-record part of this video. So here we go. At number 65, we have The Crow. This became my whole personality for a while. In fact, for my birthday one year, my mom gave me The Crow diary and some trading cards. And so it was just a whole thing. But I haven't watched it a lot in the last few years, so that's kind of why it's not any higher than this. But honestly, I love all 100 of these movies, so the ranking is, I mean, basically arbitrary, except for maybe the top 10, which are set in stone. At number 64, we have 17 again. This one is just, I think it's underrated. I think Zac Efron as an actor in general is underrated. Maybe not so much after The Iron Claw. I think people realized it at that point. But back when this was made, I think people just sort of brushed him off as the new teen idol or whatever, so this helped show a little more depth. It has him and Matthew Perry, Leslie Mann, Thomas Lennon, Melora Hardin, and the late Michelle Trachtenberg. And it's just such a sweet, heartwarming story, and it's funny. And there's like a side plot with Thomas Lennon and Melora Hardin that's just so fun. They're both like Lord of the Rings geeks, and they kind of fall in love because of that, and it's so funny. I love it. At 63, Restaurant. This is an Adrian Brody movie directed by Eric Bross, who also directed On the Line, which I had in the previous video. This is a great cast. We have Elise Neal, the late great Malcolm Jamal Warner, Jesse L. Martin from Rent and Law and Order, David Moscow, who you might know as the young Josh from Big. I hesitate to call it a love story because the couple's not together very long. Like Romeo and Juliet or West Side Story, you know, everything's so dramatic, but it's such a short-lived romance. But neither of them die in this one, though. So for number 62, I chose Toy Story 3. It is my favorite of the Toy Story sequels, and in my humble opinion, it is where they should have stopped. Because Andy, spoiler alert, Andy giving his toys to Bonnie at the end of the film when he was going off to college is just a perfect way to end it. And of course, having a trilogy is always preferable to having, you know, 5 movies or however many they're going to end up doing. Ned Beatty did a really good job playing Lotso Huggin' Bear. Lotso for short. And next up we have the original Toy Story from 1995. This one was a frequent rewatch on VHS, you know, in the little white Disney clamshell case. I just love this movie so much. And then after my daughter was born, it became one of her most rewatched movies. We had a minivan back in the day that had a DVD player, and this was in the rotation. Toy Story 2 and 3 also ended up in her minivan rotation. I don't have an issue with Toy Story 2. You'll notice it's not on the list, but I just greatly prefer the original and Part 3. At number 60, we have The Lost Boys. You would think this would be higher for me, given my favorite actress Diane Wiest is in it. But I actually didn't see this back in the 80s. I just saw this for the first time maybe 5 years ago or so. So I haven't had as many years to grow attached to it as most Gen Xers have. So I do love it, though. I tend to like vampire movies. I just realized that recently. That I guess vampire, everybody kind of has their favorite, you know, subgenre of horror or whatever, like slashers or zombies or whatever. And I guess mine is vampires. Kiefer Sutherland, between The Lost Boys and Stand By Me and that Sally Field movie, An Eye for an Eye, it's hard to look at him as anything but evil in any other project. So I think maybe I need to watch 24 or something to cleanse my palate a little bit. Now back to me from a few hours ago to give you the rest of the list. Next, at 59, we have Earth Girls Are Easy, which I mentioned in my 80s video along with The Lost Boys. Something about this movie just really clicked with me when I was a kid, and it just stuck with me. And it was kind of the beginning of my Jeff Goldblum fascination as well. I really enjoyed the scene where they do the love spell on the two police officers. It's so cute. For number 58, we have Hollywoodland, starring one Adrian Brody, Ben Affleck, Diane Lane, Bob Hoskins, Jeffrey DeMunn. It's just a great cast again. You know, my main deciding factor with liking a movie, I think, is the cast. Even my deciding factor for wanting to watch a movie is usually the cast. So that's why I mention it so often, because that's kind of my thing. I like actors. I used to kind of sort of be one, so I think maybe that's why. Film is technically a director's medium. They say theater is the actor's medium, but I don't know. Actors are kind of my thing. For 57, we have The Wedding Singer. This is really cute because it's kind of a way to get 90s nostalgia and 80s nostalgia in the same movie at this point, which is a lot of fun. As I mentioned in my previous video, I'm not really a big Adam Sandler person, but this movie is so special that it blows all that out of the water. Plus, Billy Idol's cameo is an absolute classic. And of course, Ellen Albertini Dow doing Rapper's Delight. For number 56, I chose Bullets Over Broadway. I just recently rewatched this and I had forgotten how much I love it. So it got moved up my list quite a bit. I think it had been in the 90s somewhere before. So this is the movie for which Diane Wiest won her second Oscar. The first one was Hannah and Her Sisters, also a Woody Allen movie. I think he's kind of the only person that really saw Diane Wiest's potential and didn't just cast her as somebody's timid mother. He gave her real roles to play. And so I think that made a big difference for the trajectory of her career. And this is just so funny. Chaz Palminteri is fantastic in this movie. I need to see more of his work because everything I've seen him in, he's impressed me. So maybe I'll go on a quest to see all of his movies one of these days. For number 55, this one's kind of an unusual choice, but it's Once Upon a Crime, which is the one and only film that Eugene Levy directed. It's got Richard Lewis, John Candy, Jim Belushi, Sybil Shepherd is in here, Sean Young. I think this was the first thing I saw Giancarlo Gianni in, but he's great here. George Hamilton is hilarious. Honestly, my favorite character is the dachshund. At 54, we have Ghost. I think most Gen X women would have this on their list. Maybe millennials too, elder millennials maybe. Whoopi Goldberg won her Best Supporting Actress Oscar for this movie, and that was well deserved. She did a stellar job here. She basically plays a fake psychic who turns out to be a real one, unbeknownst to her. I think a lot of us have unfairly hated Tony Goldwyn ever since this movie. Even though he's done a lot of great work since, we can't with that guy. For number 53, we have Defending Your Life, which stars Albert Brooks and Meryl Streep, and was also directed by Albert Brooks. This is just a fantastic film about the afterlife, about proving your worth to those in charge, so to speak. And I can't help but hope that this is what it's really like when you get there. It's just a special movie to me. For 52, we have The Heavenly Kid, which I have in this lovely set with Teen Witch. Teen Witch was a big one for me in the 80s, but I haven't really watched it since, so I can't really put it on my list anywhere. But The Heavenly Kid, I recently rewatched it. I found it on Tubi and thought, oh, I haven't seen that in years. So I watched it and I expected to not like it as much as I did as a kid, but I actually had the opposite reaction. I said, why don't more people talk about this movie? It's so good. And so, there's a slight twist to it. There's humor. There's a lot of touching moments. It's a really good blend. It's very interesting. Oh, you guys are so sick of hearing his name. But at number 51, we have an Adrian Brody movie called Backtrack. These 4 movies here have something in common, which didn't really click with me until I was looking down at the case, and I just sort of chuckled to myself. These last 4 are all like ghost and afterlife kind of movies, so it's kind of funny that they ended up together like this. But yeah, spoiler alert, this movie involves ghosts. Adrian plays a psychologist who figures out that all of his patients are people who have died together in a train accident. And it ends up tied in with his life as well, and which is why they're haunting him. I think it's really interesting. It's an underrated film, an underseen film. So that is it for part 2 of 4 of my 100 favorite films of all time. Join me next time for numbers 50 through 26. Take care, everyone. See you next time.